During the 6th generation, many games developed originally on a specific console and then ported over to PC and/or other consoles would lose many, if not most, of the graphical effects or other features, resulting in a downgrade, usually due to the difficulty of porting said features from a completely different hardware, like the PlayStation 2, which used the complex Emotion engine, to the PC or another console. Especially if the porting was done by a hired third-party developer and not the original team. One of these games happened to be Silent Hill 2, a masterpiece that was ported from PS2 to Xbox and PC by Creature Labs, a third-party developer. While it's not the worst port and did have one subjective improvement over the original, I'm talking about the light cast by the flashlight, by the way. It's still subjective since the light is even brighter and the radius is much wider than the original PS2 release, giving the player too much visibility in dark areas, which in my opinion detracts a bit from the intended experience. Also, you can see that for some reason in this area, the old PS2 lightning effect is still being used instead of the improved effect. Everything else received their downgrade, except for the models, and most but not all textures are on par with the PS2 original. Even the audio quality is much lower than what the original offered. I'll be comparing the original PS2 Greatest Hits version, which I played on the PS2 emulator PCSX2, an application that allows you to experience PlayStation 2 games on PC at any resolution up to 4K, with all the audiovisual features present, or at least most, depending on the game, to the new PC Enhanced mod, which I played in 1440p HD. So, the PC Enhanced mod implements quite a few missing features to the PC version, including widescreen support, a correct field of view in cutscenes, improved FMVs, and audio. However, the audio quality still isn't 100%, and some graphical effects are still missing. It was also a pain to get the mod running. Even after following the steps listed on a website, the game just wouldn't run for me. I believe the issue was the reshade program, which would cause the game to freeze after launching. I spent an hour trying to get it work, not counting the modding process itself, which took about half an hour. You're also required to download around 7 gigs of data for the best experience, because the FMVs alone weigh 4.5 gigs for some reason, probably a bad video format choice. The improved sound folder weighs 2.3 gigs, so after you're done, the game folder weighs a whopping 9.14 gigs. Compare that to the PS2 version, which weighs 3.6 gigs, and the fact that you don't have to do any modding at all, of course. Also, the enhanced mod cutscenes are still a bit lower in quality and 30 FPS compared to the PS2's 60 FPS, as demonstrated here. PCSX2 also has native widescreen support, which you can turn off at your leisure. While the widescreen patch does result in some things you're not supposed to be seeing in some areas because of the incorrect FOV, or field of view, you can easily fix this by pressing Ctrl and plus at the same time to zoom the game screen in and Ctrl and minus at the same time to zoom out. The changes you made will remain even if you close the PCSX2 app and run it again. Personally, I don't find the FOV to be a big of an issue to begin with, since it only affects a few moments in some of the cutscenes, like seeing Laura go straight through a door without opening it because you weren't supposed to see the entire door to begin with. Okay, now let's start with the graphical effects. Even modded, the PC version lacks the depth of field effect, as seen on these urinals here. The PC version here looks jaggier because I'm running this on 8x native resolution on PCSX2, even though 5x native resolution is more than sufficient if you don't want any visible jaggies, or in other words, aliasing. The tree leaves are a different color on PC, and I think the PS2 version leaves look better. Because the light reflections on James's eyes are missing from the PC version, his eyes look somewhat dead. This applies to cutscenes as well. Also, the fence here looks cleaner in the PS2 version. Nice to see that it's all dark now behind the fence in the PC version, because there used to be a bug where it would display incorrectly. So not only are the tree leaves different, but the entire foliage as well. In the PS2 version, it looks more autumnal, and I think that is more appropriate. And also I think there's more detail in the foliage, especially looking from a distance. That also applies to the cemetery area. As you can see, the ground is different in the PS2 version. It certainly looks a lot more detailed, whereas the PC version looks more pixelated.
I'm looking for Silent Hill. Is this the right way?
Yeah, this,
James' eyes are also more wide open and a different color in the PS2 version, and it's harder to tell where he's looking in the PC release.
Is it dangerous?
Maybe.
Angela's hair is more reddish in the PS2 version.
It's just...
But why?
I'm looking for someone.
I mean my mother. It's been so long since I've seen her. I thought my father and brother were here, but I can't find them either.
The waves look a lot better in the PS2 version. There are a lot more straight, more defined lines, whereas in the PC version they're kind of disjointed and don't look as much like waves. Pay attention to the tunnel light in this cutscene. In the PS2 version it actually looks like it's glowing. I feel like the Bloody Footprints texture in the PS2 version looks better because it's not just a red color, it's a more intricate texture with some black in it, so I think it looks more natural. I noticed that the spray effect is a lot more intense in the PS2 version, and it gives you a better clue at what the hitbox is, since the hitbox for the attack is the same in both versions. All health drinks in the PS2 version have a reflection of light on them, so it's easier to spot them, and it also looks better. The PS2 version also has soft shadows, which makes them look smoother. Light reflections on all mirrors, windows, and wet surfaces are completely missing from the PC version. This blur effect used to emphasize the scene is almost non-existent in the PC version. Also, the blood on the hair looks different. In the Greatest Hits version, aka Restless Dreams on PS2, there are no butterflies in the air in this room. The radius of the circular light cast by the flashlight and the lens flare is smaller in the PC version. Here it's completely gone even with the flashlight on. Pay attention to Pyramid Head's helmet in this scene and how shiny it is in the PS2 version. I also think that the transparent bits of the closet in the PS2 version look better. There's blur applied to them as well to smoothen the picture. So clearly the flashlight is casting light, but there's no light on the flashlight itself here on the PC version. Now I know this isn't a pretty sight, but look at the differences in shadowing here on the toilet. The light coming in through the gaps of the boarded windows here is missing for the PC version. Pay close attention to the differences in how Pyramid Head's great knife reflects light in the two versions. The water here is transparent in the PC version, but also very still. Pyramid Head's movement doesn't cause any waves. There's a visual bug on the power line in the PC version. Also, look at the bottom of the line. See how smooth it is in the PS2 version? Look at the difference in lighting on the poles. To me, the poles in the PS2 version look a bit more detailed. The PC version lacks self-shadows. Look at the shadows on Eddie and Laura.
Nah, nothing like that.
You're just a gutless bastard.
Also this shot, there is no shadow behind the bed, and since the bed obstructs the light, it casts a shadow on Laura.
Yell at me. What's the big deal?
Why can't you just tell me?
PS2 Maria's skirt is shinier in this cutscene. Once again, her eyes don't reflect light in the PC version. This is a good example of how much thicker the fog is in the PS2 version. The health drinks do reflect light in some areas of the PC version, but not completely accurately. Here's a comparison of the different blood solutions used in both versions. The PS2 version has a lot more blood. It's much thicker and darker, and the blood drops are bigger and create bigger pools of blood. Here's an even better example displaying the shoddy effects on the nurses. Now this effect is a lot more intense in the PS2 version, even though it does technically exist in the PC version, but is a lot weaker. Pay attention to James's eyes in this scene. The lining on his body is brighter in the PS2 version. Another example of the effect very similar to the one used after the first boss fight in Silent Hill 1. Very intense in the PS2 version. Now look at the bloody walls on the ceiling in the PS2 version. It's a lot darker than in the PC, except for the metal grating, while the fence is brighter in the PC. As mentioned before, light reflections off wet surfaces are missing from the PC version. Same goes for absolutely all the windows and doors that are supposed to reflect light in the PC version. Here's an instance where the motion blur effect is entirely missing from the PC version. Take a very good look at the water texture and how much shinier it is in the PS2 version. It actually looks like it's reflecting light off the flashlight, and the texture itself is more intricate. Yet another instance of motion blur missing. Eddie's shadow on the door is completely missing from the PC release.
Anyway, I gotta run.
In the PC version, you can see for a split second that the scene merges with the previous scene where James jumped down the hole. No shiny on the safe thingy. So once again, the water is wavier, more detailed, and less transparent in the PS2 release. Another effect missing from the PC version. I think it puts emphasis on how surreal this scene is. No light reflection on the water in the PC release. These greenish fog trails appearing after a character's movement are much less extreme in the PC. Another example of the missing reflection. Here's a very good example of the trails I described in the previous one. So once again, the effects displayed in a PC version here are much weaker than in the PS2, and the monster isn't casting a shadow on the TV. Another example of the difference in blood volumes in the two versions. Here are all the parts of the effects missing from the PC release. Once again, no self-shadows as seen on these legs. Also her torso and neck, of course. And the effect that puts emphasis on the scene is missing once again. Her hair is all kinds of buggy in this PC release. So not only are the blood drops smaller in the PC release, but also the water drops. Now here you have to look really closely to spot the difference, but the grass is a lot more detailed in the PS2 version. There's more bits of what appears to be hay or something. Also shiny and pool, shiny and pool. Here's a very obvious difference. The fog is all over the place here in the PC version, and it doesn't have different color layers. Not only that, but look how much more swirly the effect is in the PS2 version. The fog is supposed to be setting down on the floor. In the PC there's just too much of it, and the swirls are still not as complex as in the PS2. I still commend the modders for being able to incorporate this effect in the first place though. I'll let another scene play out so you can see the differences for yourselves. The light in the boat section is barely visible in the PC release. Another example of how much smoother and wavier the water is in the PS2. More stuff is visible outside the window in the PS2.
How old are you?
Pay attention to how transparency works in both versions. The drawing is barely transparent on PC. Look at the difference in shadowing on the doors and walls here. I think these windows are overly shiny given the amount of light they're casting, particularly when they're not reflecting any light in the PC. The glowy white light outside the window gives this room a very surreal vibe, and helps mask and smooth some of the uglier textures outside. It also looks really damn good. Well, we're sitting in front of windows, so naturally our eyes should be reflecting light, shouldn't they? The contrast in the scene between the light and the room is just so good. It's like James is sitting in hell, and the light is heaven which he cannot reach.
She was always waiting for you. Why? Why?
Also, the chair doesn't have a shadow of its own in a PC release. It's James's shadow and it doesn't look very good. The lighting on the two beds is different. The bottom bed looks dirtier, which I think is better, all things considered.
It's your job to heal people. How can you...
Same again with the water. Less detail, more transparency. In this bit, the water is so transparent on the PC release that you can barely see it, and how wavy it is depends on your movement in the PS2 release. Very good example right here. Look how detailed the flames are in this scene. The heat wave effect is pretty much non-existent in the PC, and the shading of the hanging body on the wall is different. There's pretty much no light on it cast by the flames on PC. Once again, her eyes and the brooch above her ear don't reflect light in the PC release.
Worth it.
Pay attention to the amount of smoke and particles coming from the flames. Here's a very good example of the many elements missing from the scene on the PC.
No. I won't.
Saving it for yourself?
Another example of the sheer complexity of flames and smoke in the PS2.
It's hot as hell in here.
So for some reason in this scene, even though James's flashlight is broken, he's still casting light in the PC release. And another example of self-shadows.
I was weak.
Light in the cutscene? No light in the game.
What are you
The
saying?
fog here is just a bit thicker in the PS2 release.
Disgusting. I don't deserve flowers. James, tell me I'll be okay. Tell me I'm not going to die.
More fog in this area on the PS2.
Mary?
The fog doesn't affect the appearance of the metal grating on the floor for some reason here. The lighting just seems off.
Time to end this nightmare.
Maria's strangulation device is not shiny in the PC release. Another occasion on PC where effects are either missing or used in the wrong places and are not accurate. Lastly, the lighting in this room is totally off in the PC release. Why are we sitting in the dark when there's a window next to us? Stay tuned for the next part where we'll listen to the differences in sound. Thanks very much for watching. Happy Halloween!